Neil from Essex here, out to go for a ride in a New Holland TH742 Plus telehandler. This is not a machine that I have a lot of seat time on, but I sure am curious and love jumping onto a new piece of equipment and going for a spin. So join me here today as we check out this new piece of equipment.
Essex, a helping hand with your land.
As dealership salespeople can seem awfully knowledgeable, and we can stand beside our equipment and rattle off all kinds of facts and figures for you, but sometimes we cheat. TH is telehandler. 7 is the lift height of the machine in meters. In this case, we take that 7 and we multiply by 3.2 feet in a meter. We know right about 23, 24 feet of lift height, and 0.42 be 4.2 metric tons. So 4.2 times 2.2 is right about 9,200 pounds or so. There's also a 9.35 model that's gonna lift higher, but not quite as much weight. And there's a Plus and an Elite. There's nothing below Plus in this case. Elite is gonna come with a little bit higher packaging of some options. Now in this latest generation of this machine here, this is a new model for us. A lot of what used to be in that Elite series is now pulled down in the Plus, and there's only very minimal mechanical differences between Plus and Elite. They're very, very similar. So we're excited today to be offering a little bit more feature rich, a little bit more value in this telehandler than what we would have had in prior generations. Starting out here at the business end of the boom is the bucket coupler. If you're coming from a tractor or a skid steer, you'd be used to like the skid steer style coupler, or if it's a big tractor, maybe the Euro style coupler. But when we get up to machines of this capacity, there is no longer a standard that the entire industry uses, and unfortunately, a lot of the buckets are proprietary to the machine that they're used on. This, though, is the Manitou coupler. This isn't covered by any kind of patents, and so New Holland is adopting this coupler system on their machine. So if you're coming from another company's unit, there's a good chance that your buckets might pin right up to this machine. Looking up here into the hydraulics, there's 2 remotes out here. They could be used to operate things like adjustable with pallet forks or a silage defacer. You can also toggle one of these remotes over to running the hydraulic coupler. So you have a choice here between being able to hydraulic couple your buckets if you're switching between attachments, or having 2 functions out here on the remote. Both of these are operated up on the control stick, and there's also the ability to get electronic functions out here also. If you're gonna be using one of these in a continuous flow mode, you can run that oil continuously out to an attachment, but still be able to operate things like electronic diverters right from the joystick back in the machine. If we flip the hood here, get down into the guts of the machine, you just use your engine key here to be able to open that up and start to get to the guts of the engine. Now, this much is expected, right? You can always kind of like pop the hood here, but I thought this part was particularly cool. Right here on the inside are some latches that have some nuts that you can tighten down to swing this out, which gets you into like your battery cutoff, your battery, more of your filters for that, and also for the radiator that sits here on the side. One of these radiators is for the hydraulics, the other one is for the engine. That will sit right up here on the top, this guy down here on the side. And if you look, you've got super easy access to be able to get to all the major mechanicals of the machine. 130 horsepower FPT engine. When we're up into this horsepower class, you'd have a particulate filter up here on the engine and also DEF fluid to treat the exhaust, so you'll need both in this kind of large machine. You can see here the cooling pack is up here on the top. This has a reversible radiator on it, so you can set a timer up in the cab or run it manually to blow chaff off the top of this if it happens to pack up full of dirt on top of the cooling pack. This is kind of a new machine for me to run around before. I've had a lot of seat time on a lot of the equipment that we have here, but this is not one of those machines. So I'm out here getting my feet wet a little bit. You know, when you look at the equipment business, I always start by talking about who builds this, right? Because it's extremely common in the equipment business for a company to source a machine somewhere and put their name on stickers on the side of the machine. There are cases where New Holland had a manufacturing relationship with a company called Dietche in the past, a company that we also have worked with directly and didn't have the smoothest experience with. This machine, though, is different. This is a New Holland built telehandler. New Holland has actually always built their large telehandlers. And this is not a machine from another company that's got their name on the side of it, right? We always want to watch out for that kind of stuff, because when we see it happening, Generally, we're paying higher prices and receiving substandard support versus when the company who's built the machine is on the name on the side of the sticker, right? You're just going to get a better product that way. That is the case with this machine. Word to every manufacturer out there. You put these nice screens in here with nice color displays and stuff on them. You need to anticipate what your operator is going to do. So when somebody like me gets here, puts the key in the ignition and turns it, and the machine doesn't start, tell us why. I probably spent 10 minutes here when I first got into this machine just rushing everything, right? Once you jump in for the very first time, you need to turn that key on, let the computer boot up and get to its home screen, set the parking brake, step on the brake, and then turn the key over and the machine will very easily start. If you rush those things, if you're too quick to get in here and start pushing the buttons like I was, it's not going to come over for you. But you got these awesome computers. Put it on the screen. Tell us like, hey, slow down, or you can tell I'm turning the key. Tell me what's wrong. Now, on the topic of the screen, I'm always super sensitive to when screens are in equipment. I've got one of those screens in my car that they try to do way too much stuff with. This machine is simply a very nice display. Gives you things like the time of day, battery voltage, operating hours, fuel, like all the display-oriented stuff that you'd want to see. It's very bright, it's very colorful, it's very clear. It's not touchscreen, which is great because you're often dirty when you're working on equipment like this, and you're not like poking your dirty fingers at the screen. It's just telling you information. It's a better display. Most of the functional stuff in driving this machine is on the joystick here. So when I want to switch between forward and reverse, I have a little toggle switch on the bottom of the joystick in order to do that. I've got a button here if I want to go into neutral. Other buttons over here in order to operate my boom extension and my hydraulic and electronic functions for my attachments that are out on the end of the machine. Over on the right-hand side of the armrest, I have a bunch of like very good heavy-duty rubberized buttons. Each one's about 3/4 inch square, so they're really easy to push with your fingers. Even if you happen to wear a set of gloves for some reason, although there's heat and air conditioning in here, you probably don't need them. But those buttons all then, you push the button to select your function, and then you use a rotary dial up here in order to make those adjustments. So you're not like punching at the buttons 15 times or holding them down to try to get them to cycle through things. You push the button and then you make an adjustment. So an example of that would be the one right here on the side that is how fast my transmission responds to speed changes. So right now it's nice and cushy. I have the declutch function turned on, so when I step on the brake, it declutches me from the transmission, and I can roll right along. And you can see there's my direction change, and I can go back to forward again. Now, if I go into this function over here, and I'm just giving you an example here of how the buttons work. I hold the button, push the button in order to put it into an edit mode, turn my rotary dial in order to select a new adjustment, and then push the button there again to confirm. And now when I drive, my takeoff is a little different, and my speed change is much softer than it was before when I had it here in the aggressive mode. That's a little too soft for my liking, honestly. But that's good. That's why we have adjustments. Now, I'm driving this machine right now in the traditional steering mode where my back wheels are straight and my front wheels turn. You can select other steering modes here as well. So this will do sideways crawls where you can point both of your wheels in one direction and drive sideways. I'm not sure why you actually want to ever do that. But the one functional one here is where you have basically front and rear wheel steering. This is a large machine, right? A fairly long footprint. So if you're working in like tight feedlots, tight areas, tight job sites, being able to turn on that four-wheel steer option really makes it a lot more maneuverable. It does swing the rear end in a slightly unpredictable way. So I would start here with just regular front wheel steering like anybody is used to. But once you become a little bit more advanced operator, you can find some added benefit and less shuttling front and back by being able to engage that steering option. There's been a handful of changes here in this generation of telehandler versus the prior ones. The biggest one for us here is pulling some of the features that used to be up in the Elite series down into the Plus series. So New Holland's creating a little bit more value now in the lower tier, less spec machines. The biggest place that we see that is in the transmission. This one now has more gears in it than what the other one did. More gears is going to essentially give you more power within those ranges. And they've also attached now the control console to the air ride seat. So as I'm bouncing up and down in this machine, driving across rough ground, the stick here is bouncing with me, and so my hand is now not bouncing on those controls, maybe making the machine more difficult to operate or causing unexpected movements. These things existed previously, but it was up in the Elite series where you had to pay a lot more money for them. So now bringing some of that stuff down into Plus really gives us that value. The Elite series does still exist, but when I sat down and went through kind of the feature function stuff in those nice glossy brochures, the biggest thing that I could find was some small differences in the hydraulic pummeling and stuff and the way the boom is put together. But other than that, the proportions, the dimensions, the features of these machines are now very, very similar from one another. So there's a more compelling value now in this Plus package than what we would have had before. A couple of interesting things here from a safety standpoint. We're talking about machines here that lift a lot of weight, right? And it can be really difficult in order to gauge exactly how much weight you have out there on the end of the boom. This is going to have sensors on it that give you an idea exactly how much is out there and prevents you from overloading the machine. So we have a little gauge over here, up here on the dash with lights that will light up. As you bring that machine up to weight, you're going to see that kind of gauge climb up, giving you an idea how much weight is out there. It will prevent you from overloading it, so the boom will actually stop at a point that it recognizes that there's too much weight out there and that the machine could fall forward. Now, if you see the need to override that, you can. There's kind of a switch that's hidden back here in an inconvenient place, which is probably smart to allow you to override that if you're right on the cusp of being able to get something done. But there's those safety features there in order to ensure that you don't overdo this, right? You put 6,000 pounds up on the end of a 35-foot boom. You don't want that to bring the machine down. That could be dangerous in a lot of ways. Up here on the screen too, it's also going to tell you the angle that you've got that boom out. There's charts in here that you can follow to do calculations of exactly how much weight you can put on this machine. And the displays in here will help you do that with digital readouts for the boom angle and some indicators here for how far the boom is extended. The one thing I often say about New Holland products, tractors, skid steers, telehandlers certainly holds true, is that you can see the automotive bones in this company. If you're not aware, New Holland's parent company is Fiat, and Fiat Chrysler's got a lot of automotive roots, right? When you sit in this machine, you can see that kind of stuff. When you're spending money on new equipment, like new equipment costs anymore, the expectations for many of our customers is that this feels like your platinum truck or SUV does, right? I mean, that's kind of the expectation that we get when we're spending things that are as much or more than our vehicles are. And you can see a lot of that stuff in here. So again, we talked about the screen here earlier, bright, clear, easy to see, a lot of good diagnostics on it, a great feel to the physical controls that you're touching, air ride seats with heat in it, a radio that's got Bluetooth control that I can hook my cell phone to and take a call, right? It's amazing how utilitarian things have become so plush over the years. Pretty cool machine, and easy to see why year after year the market for these things just seems to get a little bit bigger and more of our customers get a little bit more interested. Certainly a costly unit, right? There's a lot of machine here, but there's also a lot of things that this machine can do that others simply can't when you start looking at the heights that these booms can reach to and the amount of weight that they can lift. So if you have an application that calls for a machine like this, we'd be glad to help. You can give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or check us out at Messicks.com. We dealership salespeople can seem extra knowledgeable. This is 4,200 metric tons. So if we take 4,200 metric tons, that's not right. Okay.